All right, and welcome back to the Braking Zone. I'm Dave, because we don't seem to introduce each other that well. So I'm Dave, YouTuber, professional motorcycle coach, journalist degree. With CanyonChasers is kind of where I started, and you are.
I'm Brian. I am an engineer. I road race motorcycles. I've been doing that for a bunch of years. Ride dirt bikes, ride all kinds of different stuff, and been around with Dave for like 20 years now, I think.
Right, yeah, and that's how we met each other. We have been like the lead control riders for our biggest local track day organization for 20 years now.
Long time.
That's how long we've been doing it. So we are old. But let's dive right into Mandalika. Mandalika, this is always, you talk to anybody who has ever attended this event, and they say this is one of the best MotoGP races to attend, not Phillip Island and not Europe. And it's on a tiny little island. I don't know who had the money to build a racetrack on a tiny little island. You have to take a boat to get there. And we have this world-class racetrack, one of the best racetracks on the planet, on this little island. And despite how it looks, it is a track that is all about cornering. It is not a stop-and-go track, even though the track map makes it look like that it's a stop-and-go track.
Yeah, it's proven to be a really great track for racing. I would say that this was my favorite race round of the season so far for the actual racing.
Excellent racing. Like, it was a lot of passing. Part of that, I think, was they had a bunch of different tires. I'm not really familiar what was different about. There's a different rear tire, I guess.
Yeah, so at Mandelica, at Thailand, and at Austria, they have to Michelin runs a harder rear compound. And so basically they call it a high temp compound. So it has effectively an extra layer in the carcass. So the whole tire is a bit stiffer. It's a bit more heat resistant, so it lasts longer. And because the temperatures here and at Thailand and so forth are brutal, in Austria, there's just so much force going through the rear tire that it needs that extra layer as well there. So they definitely run that harder tire here, which, to everyone's delight, completely turns the whole race up on its head.
Well, and because of the way the weekend transpired, none of the top contenders of the entire season were really even around for the main event, which was interesting, right?
Yeah.
Bezzecchi crashes out. Marquez, I sure hope his right shoulder is okay. Like, talk about bad luck. But we had people riding and succeeding and doing extremely well who normally don't. Freaking Luca Marini got mugged.
Yeah.
And Fernandez, I am really disappointed with Fernandez that, like, I don't know why he caused that caused all that kerfuffle. If he wouldn't have done that, all three of them, like both of them would have got a podium. But he kind of did that bonehead move. Freaking Luca Marini. I hated to see that. But anyway, it made for great racing because it was different people up at the front.
Yeah. Yeah. As soon as Bez took Marquez out in the Grand Prix, it was like all bets are off. And you could tell the riders also realized, wait, the top two are gone. I could win this. You could see everybody suddenly was trying really hard in that lead pack.
Except for the guy who did win it. What was he, like 8 or 9 seconds ahead?
He looked.
Let's talk about him for a minute.
So Fermin Aldeguer, so you're talking about, rookie in the Gresini Ducati team, who I think most people have assumed, or maybe he's been unassuming, I should say, because we all know he's on the best bike, the GP24. He's in Gresini, which is probably the best team outside of a factory ride, but probably for a rookie, it is the best team because it's a much better atmosphere. And he has Frankie Carcetti, who is, I'd say, arguably the best crew chief in MotoGP ever. He's had, I think Fermin is his 5th Grand Prix winner that he's been the crew chief for, which is a pretty unheard of statistic to have 5 different riders win races.
You know, we've talked about Fermi a handful of times on this podcast, and I basically dismissed him. You kind of did too, because, okay, yeah, he's a rookie. He's a talented rookie, but he was on the best bike. And so any success he had, you're like, oh, well, yeah, he's on a GP24. It's the best bike on the paddock. But now, this weekend, he was on a bike that exceeds or excels in stop-and-go tracks. And here he was dominant on the Ducati on a track that's all about corner speed, a track where typically Aprilia excels.
Mhm.
And so that really, really impressed me that he has the potential, I believe, to become a really well-rounded rider. If he can be competitive, he's been upper third all season, right? He can be good on the stop and go tracks on a stop and go bike, but to take a stop and go bike and be good on a flowy track, that was
Yeah.
that was cool. That was cool to watch.
And I think part of this comes from, we'll talk about the tire in a minute. I think part of this comes from his background. He still carries a lot of his sort of Moto 2 mentality of big entry speed, big corner speed, roll through corners with momentum. And in most places on a Ducati, that kind of punishes you. That's not really how you ride the Ducati most tracks. But at this track, it's how you have to, not just because of the layout of the track, but also because of the way that the tire works best with that high temp rear tire. So should we dive into the tire right now?
Yeah, let's talk about the tire, right? Because I think that was part of what made the racing good. There were more tires to choose from. There were more variables. Yeah, what was it? I think they said there were more different tires on the starting grid of the main event than there have been in like 5 or 6 years. Because typically everybody's on the soft front and the medium rear. Or
they all kind of figure out. Yeah.
But this time, like, it was all over the map. And yeah, let's talk about the tire.
Well, speaking of tires all over the map, one little caveat. I believe Yamaha had all 4 riders on 4 different configurations. I don't think there was 2 Yamahas with the same tires. That's how interesting this track is for tires, but that's also how lost Yamaha is they were like, throw all of it at it. Let's just see what sticks.
Who's going to do better?
So probably the less said about Yamaha at the moment, the better. But so the rear tire, it has this extra hard carcass, which does not provide very much grip from the rear tire. It provides much, much less, especially under braking because the tire's unloaded, more so under braking. And it really showed off riders who can carry corner speed, because if you could get the bike leaned over and carry some angle to it, it seemed like they were able to get enough load into the rear and find the grippier part of the tire to actually use what the rear tire could do. And that's why I think you saw the Aprilias excelling. I mean, Raul Fernandez fighting for a podium. Frankly, that shouldn't be happening. He's not as talented as these other guys. Bezzecchi making everybody else look like he was on a different class of machine when he was on the bike. I think these guys who were able to get the bike leaned over and carry corner speed and use the edge of the tire really excelled this weekend. I think it highlighted that the Honda has made massive steps this year. You saw, both, some unfortunate fate for Mir, but Marini basically was up there fighting with those guys.
Oh, and I loved it. I loved seeing Marini up there. Well, and Acosta was also, this was the Acosta that KTM wanted, right? Like he didn't yield.
Mm-hmm.
It was so great to see.
Yeah.
All of these riders that are super talented that have been shadowed or overshadowed or we've forgotten about because Ducati is so dominant.
Yep.
Right?
It's been interesting because this weekend you saw the bikes that are really designed to use the front tire more for stopping, or at least a more balanced approach. Whereas the Ducati is so rear biased. It's so engineered around getting as much as it can possibly get out of the rear tire that when it went to a scenario where it didn't have that rear tire grip that it needed, they were nowhere. Even Marc Marquez looked tentative. He looked nervy. He didn't look fast at all. He looked very, very scared. Scared is probably not the right word for Marc Marquez, but he definitely didn't look like the normal confident Marc that we see. And really, I think that's a little bit what caused the crash with him and Bez, where Bez, between those two corners, it's more of a sweeping line. Bez was able to take a ton of speed into those corners. And on the first lap, Marc was scared. Marc was not going through with any kind of speed like Bez had. And I think as much as the whole thing is truly Bez's fault, like it's by no means is it Marc's fault, I think Bez genuinely did not expect Marc to be going that slow on that line. I think that surprised the heck out of him.
I'm really excited to hear not excited, but really interested to hear your perspective on that crash, because me watching it right off the bat, what I thought I saw was Bez got another bad start. The Aprilia is not known for being a strong starter, and panicked when he shouldn't have.
Mhm.
And so I saw him running into the back of Marquez is completely on, like, it was his mistake.
Mhm.
So it's interesting to hear you say that, well, yes, but Marquez was also not riding like Marquez. He was being more tentative. Let's use that word. That's better than afraid.
Yeah. He definitely, when you watch the replay, and Mark's not necessarily going crazy slow. The rider right ahead of Mark, he wasn't gaining or losing any kind of gap to him. But Bez on that Aprilia was able to basically go for broke from lights out. He did not have to wait for the tires to warm up at all. He was able to just start going from the beginning. I think he came through that sweeper. Yes, I think there was a bit of panic that he's trying to make up some time that he lost. So I think he came into that thing carrying as much as he possibly could get away with. But when all of a sudden Mark was right there, and I don't think he expected Mark to be going that much slower on the line. Again, it's all Bez's fault. I'm not saying it's not, but I don't even know if Bez was really going to attempt to pass there, or if he just came sailing into that thing with so much more speed that he was like, "Oh, I thought you'd be going faster," and basically rear-ended him.
Well, and if you paid attention after the crash, Bez was apologetic to Marquez. And these guys have a mixed history. Sometimes they get along, sometimes they don't. I don't think they've been getting along great lately. But again, I thought it showed Bez's character that he knew that it was his fault in that situation too. And not to get too sidetracked on Marquez, but it's his right shoulder, a lot of soft tissue damage. From what we're hearing, this could potentially again end his career. We don't know a whole lot yet, but we talked last week about how tenuous this whole thing is, that it means nothing and it means everything. There's real stakes to this. And Marquez has to be happy that he buttoned up the championship last round, because we were all, you made the comment last week about when someone wins, you have all this faith that they're going to keep winning.
Yeah.
And we don't know a whole lot about Marquez's shoulder yet, but this might potentially be his last championship. I hope I'm wrong. I hope he heals. I hate to see a rider. I hate to see a rider's career end because of an injury. I hate to see that. Yep. And it's part of why I get really frustrated when riders cause crashes, because the consequences are so high. Stop. I think it's who did Rossi have a big rivalry with? It was Max Biaggi. So yeah, Sete Gibernau went on like a big tirade over Marquez years ago, saying the rules need to change. No touch. Because the consequences are too high. Now again, things are going to happen, but when you see riders intentionally bumping into each other, he was like, that should never happen. Any intentional touch from another rider should be absolutely punished. It should be punitive, because the consequences are too high. And we're seeing this with potentially Marquez, that I'd hate to see
I think he will come back from this one. It's a broken collarbone with sounds like some soft tissue damage. Now it can be bad. Can be rotator cuff.
I thought there was some fracture in the humerus as well. There were some...
Oh, maybe there's more. I mean, to that point though, he's buttoned up the championship early. He can kind of coast into the off season. Frankly, no one's going to fault him if he doesn't even ride the rest of the year.
Yeah, I don't expect we're going to see him in Phillip Island in 2 weeks.
No, I think he's definitely out for the next 2 rounds minimum. He may make it back for the last round, if only so he can do the testing the day after. Right, that would be the main reason why he would even show up. But I think he's learned a lot of lessons. I think he's gonna take the recovery serious.
Well, he's always said that was his mistake, coming back too soon. Yeah.
The thing that I really admired the most was Marquez made a social media post the day after, or maybe the day of the race. It was a picture of him in a sling, and in the comments he basically says, "Hey everyone, no hard feelings toward Bez. Totally a racing thing. No hard feelings," which was, I thought, so great of him to use his platform to say, "Hey, I know you guys are my fans. Please don't take it out on him. These things happen."
He has done that his entire career.
I think that was great.
He's caused a lot of crashes, but whenever he gets caught up in someone else's crash, I can't think of a time where he ever made a fuss
Yeah.
about someone bumping into him, because I think he
I thought that was
Rubbin's racing Cole.
Yeah, I just thought that was a great gesture of him.
I
you
agree.
know?
Yeah, I totally agree.
Yeah.
Because like you could see, it really bummed me out at one of the Italian rounds where the Italians started booing Marquez.
Oh, in Misano,
In
when he crashed in the
Misano,
sprint.
and I was inappropriate. Like, I get it. Like, but no.
No, I don't get it though. Like, I'm so annoyed by that. That sort of fandom is kind of gross and awful, and I hate that part of it. I get that you have your favorites, and I get that you have your sports teams or whatever, but that level is like, don't show up. Like, there's no space for that here. I don't want to see it.
I guess I get it for like, because it's national pride at that point. Like in America, we don't really, have that, like the American team versus the.
If you're from a country other than America, I have no interest in golf whatsoever, but I'm wildly embarrassed by the Ryder Cup that just happened. The American fans were apparently brutal to all of the non-American competitors. It was embarrassingly so. So anyway, point taken. This happens.
Yeah.
I don't like it, but it does happen. You're right. So
yeah, we get worked up about it. But aside from that, so the racing was great.
Speaking of factory Ducatis,
I was just going to talk about Pecco. I really wanted to talk about Pecco a little bit because, all right, so he's getting a lot of flack, right? There's a conspiracy theories flying around like mad. I saw one that the last round in Japan, he was actually on a GP24, which is hogwash. That can't happen. We have a friend who does tech for MotoGP. Our good friend Dana, who lives down the road, he does tech for MotoGP. There's stickers that are special. Like he's not gonna.
No way.
Right? Or that Ducati is, they're trying to sabotage him. So market. No, I think again that's ridiculous. Ducati would love to see all three bikes on the podium being Ducatis.
Yeah,
it's ridiculous. And I think we're losing sight of that he has been first or second the last 4 years in a row. He knows what he's doing. He's a talented rider. Every championship is hard to win. You can say, well, maybe it was an easier championship because Marquez was on the Honda. He still won. And so to see him from dominating DFL, right? It's really confounding.
I don't think I've ever seen anything like it because it's not like, oh, he crashed out of the races. Like, no, he was dead effing last and then crashed out.
Right.
There is not like bad luck. It's like, no, nothing was working.
Something was wrong. Now, again, you were right last week when you said it was the ride height device and it was the swing arm. That has been since been confirmed that they changed it. But also, his team manager said he's on the exact same bike this round as he was last round. Yeah. So why was he able to figure it out in Japan, and then he comes to Mandelica
and nothing works
and can't? I'm like, it's
so I think there's a few things. So I do want to add to. We did learn that the GP25 and the GP24 engine is the exact same case, meaning he could be running. That was
our theory for a long time.
Yeah, I think for a while they thought, they must have modified the engine case balance. So some
can't use the GP24 chassis.
That's what the thought was. But effectively, he can run everything about the GP24 other than the engine, and the only engine spec difference, the crank inertia is the same. Most everything else is the same. The little tweaks they made were all just reliability. They're all just reliability tweaks. So I think in general, that's not it. It ended up being the ride height device and the way the swing arm works was the bigger thing. So really what it is the 25 allowed the bike to drop a bit lower, gives them a little bit more grip on coming out of corners. But when it releases on the braking phase, that created some sort of instability that Bagana just could never wrap his head around, and Marquez could. So that was the main difference that they found. So now, fast forward, they go to Motegi. They put the GP24 ride height device and swing arm and forks, I think, even on his bike, and let him go out, and he dominates. He's Bagana again, and he's crushing, and he kills everybody with it. Then they go to Mandelica, and it's back to the drawing board, and everything's not working at all. I think there's a few reasons why it worked in Motegi and it didn't work here. So first, Motegi and Mandelica couldn't be much more different of a track. Motegi is the most stop and go track there is on the whole calendar, basically, maybe outside of Austria, you could argue. But really, it is straight line, hard braking, turn, gas, do it again, and over and over and over. And that's truly what the Ducati's built to do, and it excels at it. And Bagana is built to do that. That's how he wins races. That's how he goes fast. It worked for him in Motegi. Then they go to Mandelica, which is a very high speed, very leaned over, on the side of the tire, gentle entrances, high corner speed track. Not his style, definitely not the Ducati style. And they have to run the extra hard rear tire. I think, my theory anyway, is that the Ducati, that bike is so designed around getting every ounce of grip out of the rear tire that it can, that when they have to go to that extra hard compound rear, when he goes to the brakes, he's not getting any help at all out of the rear tire like he's used to, because that hard carcass just isn't gripping at all. And so he goes into the corner with nothing but the front brake. And the only one who can really manage that seemingly is either Marc Marquez or Fermin Aldeguer right now. Nobody else seemed to be able to manage dealing with that on the Ducati like Fermin was able to. And I think that's really where Bagnaia fell apart. Now, I don't think that problem was so much that a GP25 could not do well at that track. But I think this psychological component of this is that Bagnaia sort of is given up. Whereas we used to see the old Bagnaia, 23, 24 Bagnaia, he would be terrible on Friday. He'd be in the bottom 10 of the order on Friday for his free practice. And by qualifying or the sprint race or the actual GP, he's winning or fighting for podiums. He used to be in the hole and fight out of it every single round. And I think that little piece of him is just broken this season. I don't think, not that he doesn't have the will or the ability to do it. I think it's broken right now and he can't get out of this rut. Whereas in Motegi, he was fast from the get-go. And I think once he had that confidence in free practice one and he was quick, it was easy to carry the momentum all around. But in Mandelica, I think as soon as it came around to free practice one and he couldn't make it work and he couldn't stop the bike and he's running off track, I'm out, whatever. I don't care about this.
And now we're heading to Phillip Island, which is another flowy track.
Yeah.
So I guess if you're running the MotoGP fantasy league and you're listening to this podcast, don't double your points on Pecco for next weekend.
Yeah, and we'll see. It's such a curveball now with all of this stuff going on with Pecco. You never know which one you're going to get. I would agree. I think for the most part, Pecco's probably checked out the rest of this season mentally. We may get to a round where on Friday free practice, he's feeling good and he's going to push and he might win another race this year for all I know. But yeah, I think what we're seeing is the combination of the bike shattering the rider's confidence and the rider sort of a bit giving up on the season. And just hoping that things are different next year.
If you look big picture, this season has been hard on a lot of riders.
Yeah.
Right? Like we've lost, Martin,
yeah.
Now Marquez, Maverick.
Yep.
Like there's been a lot.
Bastianini's confidence.
Yeah, Bastianini has like disappeared off the back. This has been a hard season for a lot of, even the dominant ones have really struggled. So it's going to be interesting. I'm really ready for a change in the rules. Part of me really wishes the switch to 800 was happening next year.
Well, I watched the World Superbike round from Aragon. And if you haven't watched it, go watch it. It's pretty good race. It reminded me so much of, and now that I was thinking about this as I'm watching the race, what Liberty actually wants is they just want all the MotoGP riders on the World Superbike stage in terms of the bikes, because the way that the bikes work with the Pirelli tires, the no ride height device, the way less aero, the racing's excellent. It was Bulaga and Toprak fighting in that race. It was excellent. Every couple laps, one of them's passing the other. They're passing each other in the same places. They were fighting, and it was so much fun to watch, and you had no idea who was going to win. that's the show that MotoGP needs,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And I am excited that I think we might get something closer to that in 2027 once we get rid of ride heights, we get the Pirelli tires, which I think are much easier to race on, much less aero, definitely less power. But frankly, even the World Superbikes, they ain't slow. They're making about 260 or 280, I think, at this point.
Shorter race, though.
Shorter race, so it does make for a little bit more excitement with the tires.
Well, and the tires are more likely to survive.
Yep.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm excited for the changes to come, but that's another whole season away before that happens.
Right. Yeah, we still don't know. And trying to predict. You can't predict, right? And it's,
it's fun to try.
It is fun to try, but it's also why it is so interesting because, all right, let's talk about Aldeguer really quick. Every other time that we have seen, almost every other time that we've seen a rookie bugger off the front, they usually crash themselves out within 3 to 5 laps. Aldeguer didn't. Like, I was like, he's going to crash. Like every time I've been watching MotoGP since you could watch it, right? And every other time I've seen the new rider hammer off the front like that, they've crashed out.
And he looked great.
And he didn't.
Yeah, he looked steady, smooth, easy. He looked great.
Yeah, you can't predict it. It's not predictable, and that's part of the fun.
But yeah, I think that's ultimately why the Mandelica race is so fun, is you just do not know what's coming. And that's fun about it. And Phillip Island can be like that too with the weather. There's been some absolute amazing races at Phillip Island over the years. So who knows, with Marquez out for this round, maybe that opens up the doors and a lot of people are out there just trying to get a win for the season and see what they can make happen. So might be another good round.
Now, you probably know, I don't know if I know, that I know in Formula One that if you get a point or if you get a podium, you get paid, right? The team gets money. And I don't know, does that work that way in MotoGP? So like every point, Dorna is going to give you some cash to keep your team going?
I don't think it works quite. It's definitely not the same sort of incentive plan that they have in Formula One. Definitely the riders oftentimes have bonuses for performance. And I know Ducati's very, very heavily leans into that, where it's a very small base, but then a big upside potential with bonuses. I'm sure Marquez raked in the money this year.
Yeah, and poor Pecco is probably like, crap, how am I going to pay for my yacht?
I think he'll survive. Anyway, we talked about the extra hard rear tire at Mandelica, creating this really difficult condition for the riders. We are now coming into fall. It is much cooler out now. I'd love to talk a little bit about street riding and just how you guys deal with, running in cooler conditions with a little less grip than maybe you're used to.
So funny you bring that up. The next video that's coming out, or probably by the time the podcast hits, the video will already be out on the main channel, about fall riding. And something that a lot of people don't realize is that for a large portion of the world, October is the month with the most amount of crashes.
Really?
Yeah, people don't think that. You think like it's going to be, it's got to be winter, or it's got to be spring, or whatever.
Spring?
Now, or winter, snow and ice, right?
Yeah.
It's October, and it's October for several reasons. And I go into this in detail in the video in kind of the more traditional, like YouTube listicle format. But cold tires is like, obviously it's going to be like wet leaves and stuff like that. But I think there are two factors that really don't get enough attention as to what causes crashes. And before we talk about cold tires, I think one of them is our attitudes, right? It's a personal attitude that I've been riding all summer. I've been working on my skills. My confidence is up. I'm used to these things. Or like my skill set or my comforts at this level. And now the conditions have now changed and we fail to adapt. Right. And so I think there's that big whole mental, we got to like shift our thinking when we come into, but the other one is absolutely 100% unequivocally fall or cold tires, right? The road's not getting as warm because the sun's lower in the horizon. The tires aren't coming up to temperature. We talked about this a little bit already in this podcast, but your average street tire, the operating temperature is like 140 to 170 degrees, depending on the tire. Fahrenheit, that's like 50 to 70 degrees Celsius. And, when it's 16 degrees Celsius or, 45, 50 degrees outside, it takes a lot of work or a lot of time to get a tire up to temperature. And a lot of times we're not thinking about that. And, so how do you warm up a tire, Brian? Like, what is the, like, you're on the racetrack, you have these little electric blankets that warm up your tire.
You plug them in, Dave. That's
you plug them in. That's how you warm up your tire.
Yeah, it's interesting. So how you warm up a tire is all because you're flexing the carcass. That's where the heat actually gets generated, is the flexing and the friction on the road. If you can brake hard in a straight line, hard in a safe way, don't slide the front tire. Don't mash it.
Don't be abrupt.
But if you can get load into the front tire and then get load onto the rear tire and do that back and forth, you're more likely to generate better heat into the carcass of the tire, which is going to last and hold longer than if you were to swerve left and right. You may heat up the surface of the rubber a little bit, but you're actually running an awful lot of risk if you have cold tires trying to swerve left and right.
I think the swerving comes from F1, because in F1 they do the swerving thing, but that's causing their sidewall to flex. It's causing that deformation in the tire to generate heat. But a motorcycle tire works differently.
And you'll flex the sidewall a bit doing that, but not much, and not without running a lot of risk to do it. So it definitely would not be the recommended way to try to generate heat into the tire. You're much better off trying to do it straight line braking, straight line acceleration, really flexing it in that way. It's a much, much better way to do it on the street.
One of the top questions we get on the channel is actually people are, they don't trust their tires fully. They're like, how do I know where the limit is? Like, how do I find the limit? And it's one thing I'm always trying to stress is that we're not trying to find the limit of the tire. We're kind of trying to stay away from it. And so we're always sneaking up on the limit, right? It's why abruptness is such a bad thing. If we're talking, like, even on a warm, sunny day, you just like huck the thing on its side. You just like pop a counter twitch or like snap a counter steer to throw the thing on its side. That's an abrupt move. It's hard to be precise with that. Or if you just grab the brake or you whack the throttle, it's really easy to blow right past whatever limit of traction there may be. But even braking in a straight line, we can kind of get away with being more abrupt because we're straight up and down, right? Like there's less risk of the thing coming out from underneath us. But even still, when we load the tire, we sneak up onto it, or we're braking, and it's. My wife says she hates the word sneak. To me, she thinks sneak is an abrupt thing, like boo. So maybe sneak isn't the best word. But when we're progressively working our way in deeper into like braking pressure, and it starts to slip or it starts to feel funny, you can give back pressure. You can do the same thing with the throttle. You can do the same thing with lean angle. That by having these smooth, linear, progressive moves, that's where you can find where your grip may be today on this tire with this fuel load at this temperature with those leaves on the asphalt. And, and I talk about this a lot, and I want to hear what you have to say about it too. But, sometimes we get criticized because the commenters will say, well, you shouldn't be riding on the street like you ride on the racetrack. And yes and no, right? Yes, you should not be going that fast. But no, because we want to be using their techniques, but not at that speed. And this is where, like your perspective racing and stuff like that, you don't win races crashing into turn one.
Right.
Right. And so we had this conversation a little while ago talking about how your lap times are really consistent. And you're like, oh, I'm really consistent. And I was like, no, that tells me you're really adaptable because everything's changing constantly. Right. And talking about tires, I'm getting a little like I'm covering a lot of ground here. People think race tires are super soft and gooey, and they are when they're 200 degrees Fahrenheit. Right. But it takes they're
hard as a brick otherwise.
They're hard as a brick otherwise. They're 10 times harder than your average street tire. So anyway, as I blathered on about all of these these topics,
I think the main thing you pointed out. So let's answer you shouldn't ride like that on the street. You're right. You shouldn't ride like you're racing on the street. You shouldn't be that close to the limit of things on the street. That's very dangerous because there's all kinds of unpredictable things that can happen. That on the track, there's also unpredictable things that can happen, but you're willing to take that risk in that environment more.
Everybody agreed that this is what we're doing for these next 20 minutes.
Yeah. So definitely you should not be riding nearly to that to the limit like that. But the principles are no different, right? The gentle loading of the brake force into the front tire, not just stabbing at the front brakes, all of those principles, those work everywhere. Those work with everything, frankly, right? If you think about, if you try to push something, one of the examples that I think about, I'm going to go down an example and we may scrap this. So just be mindful in the edit. One of the examples I think about is, as you were explaining this, I was visualizing actually like when people play the game of shuffleboard, which is like an odd example. But basically shuffleboard, from one spot, you kind of cast the little stone down and you just try to get it to land exactly where you want it to. And now you can get it there with a lot of practice and a lot of repetition. You can start getting a feel for it. But it would be so much easier if you just slowly guided it down with your hand and then right at the end, let go of it. You'd be much more precise and more accurate if you could do it that way, right? It's the same thing with what you're doing with all the inputs on the bike. If rather than just saying, you know what, I'm going to pull it exactly this hard, that's how much braking force I'm going to give it for this corner. If instead you said, I'm going to start applying brakes, I'm going to keep increasing brakes or decreasing the brake pressure until it's the speed I'm comfortable with while I turn into the corner. It'd be way easier to give yourself that flexibility to make changes based on the road, based on the conditions, based on the feel that you're getting. You mentioned the initial question really was, how do I build confidence in my tires?
Where's the limit of my where's my limit of grip, right?
And I will tell you this, when you're on the street, when you're on the track, you never know before you enter the corner. You're always adjusting things as you go. Right now on the racetrack, we have the luxury of seeing the same corner every 90 seconds or whatever. So we get a lot of repetition and we get to practice and adjust. But on the street, it's no different. As you're going into the corner, you're kind of eyeballing it and judging, okay, it looks pretty tight. I'm going to slow down more. As you're slowing, you're getting feedback from the tire. If you can listen to it, if you can feel it through the bar and feel it through the lever, it will tell you what the tire is doing or can do on that surface. I promise if you go in on a icy slick road and you go to the brakes, you will be able to tell it's an icy slick road before it's completely crashed, right? You'll get that feedback of, hey, I'm asking for brakes and I'm not getting any, like I'm not slowing down like I want to. The front's sliding or it's pushing a little bit. So if you will allow the tire to talk to you and listen to it, you're going to get that feedback. And then what makes you better or worse at that is just developing that ability to listen to what the tires are doing and what they're telling you.
It's really interesting how this really ties into like the GP race, right? They put on the different tire, riders were excelling in different situations or failing in different situations. Pecco is struggling with maybe not having rear brake pressure like he's used to, and this constant need to adjust and adapt and to tweak to what's happening in real time. And grip is such a big part of that, right? Like we only have two wheels. A car, you get a flat tire, it's an inconvenience. On a motorcycle, you get a flat tire, you're probably on your head.
Right.
And so it requires this high level of attention and judiciousness and forethought. And a lot of people, they just fall back on go slow. Just go slow. But even that, I think, is a trap, right? How slow is slow enough, right? Like okay, I'm going to go everywhere at 20 miles an hour, and I'm going to keep counterleaning, and I'm going to keep being abrupt because I'm only going 20 miles an hour. Well, you can still run out of grip at 20 miles an hour because conditions can change. Mm-hmm. And part of what I really love about the dovetailing between racing and street riding, even though not the same speed, right? But if I look at what, Aldeguer was doing to go that speed in a weird grip situation and not fall down, what was he doing? Not how fast was he going, but what was he doing that kept him from falling down? Can I implement any of that in my riding? What was he doing different? Right? Now, the obvious thing is we saw early on that people were hanging off the motorcycle, so it was carrying less lean. Oh, I can carry less lean, and that's going to give me more grip to deal with the unexpected. Okay, let me try doing that. Mm-hmm. Trail braking came from that. Oh, they're slowing into the corners, and we can see how the radius adjusts as like, oh, I can not necessarily at their speed, but I can apply that at my mere mortal
Right.
pace to get these same benefits. Reducing risk is reducing risk. Reducing risk at 20 miles an hour is just as valuable to me as reducing risk at 120 miles an hour.
Yeah, I think when I think about what allows you to go faster on a racetrack, which would be the same thing that allows you to be safer on the street, a lot of it comes down to how can I get better input or better information from the tires, essentially. I think most of the time, most riders, the front tire is the thing that they're the most scared about. I see lots of riders who have never low-sided a bike ever. They've never tucked a front end proper and actually crashed a bike, but they've definitely ran off the road before. They've definitely ran wide before because they were scared of the front sliding. Right. And rightly so. You should be scared of the front sliding.
But like this is such an excellent point. I'm excited to hear where you're going.
Really, if you can focus on trying to develop feel for what the front tire is telling you, that is honestly, that is like 80% of the battle. That's more important than body position. That's more important than so many of these other cues and things that YouTube will tell you and this your buddy will tell you is important and all these things. It's developing feel in the front tire. That is the most important thing to being able to go fast and do it controllably and safely, is being able to know what it's doing, right? A lot of the little things for that is just gentle inputs, gentle control inputs. And by that, I mean, you're not shoving the bike, you're not leaning on the bars, you're being light on the bars, but not so light that they're almost out of your hands, but light enough that if the tire moves or flexes, it's telling you that you're not just death gripping the thing, right? So a lot of it is if you can work on developing feel in that front tire, I promise you your skill and your comfort and safety is going to go through the roof very, very quickly, way more so than body position and a lot of other things are going to do. Those things are important, but I would put almost all of them second to getting feel for the front tire.
Right. I couldn't agree more. And it was one thing that I keyed in on relatively early when I started riding on the track was that front end slides from overloaded tires almost never happens. Even watching MotoGP, it happens occasionally, but almost every front end slide that we see in our world on the track, and even in MotoGP, is from an underloaded tire. It's typically at the moment, if you pay attention watching MotoGP, the front end goes away at the moment either when they finish their braking event or when they return to the throttle. That's where almost all of the front end slides come. Occasionally you'll get in MotoGP, you'll get them overwhelming the front tire and tucking the front and coming down. But when I realized that in my own riding, that as long as I'm not abrupt and I don't do that like that pop or that abrupt thing or whatever, that I can carry a fair bit of pressure on that front tire. But it made me so much more cognizant and so much more aware of how I was releasing that front brake, right? I don't want to just let go of it. Like we're talking about fall riding. It's cold. The road might be damp in my lane or whatever. I kind of want to keep a little bit of load on that. And to just let go of it and let that fork rebound really quickly and that contact patch just shrink, that's far more terrifying to me as a rider than, I'm going to hang on to this front brake just a little bit longer. I'm going to add a few more points of pressure and see what it does.
Yeah, 100%. It really is being able to manage that front. If you've been riding bikes for any length of time, you've had a rear slide. Everyone's had a rear slide a little bit, whether it was scary or a big drift or whatever. You've had a rear buck a little bit. And it happens, okay. It's not nearly as big a deal as what that first time if you ever get that front that tucks slightly and it snaps back, but you're okay. Oh man, that's a way bigger pucker moment than when the rear steps out a little bit. So yeah, working on whatever you can do to develop feel in the front tire, that's the most crucial thing. I'm curious from your coaching, I have one in mind, but I'm curious what your thought is. Do you have any particular drills or things that you think are great for riders to practice or think about to help them develop and kind of get some more idea of understanding of what that front tire is doing?
Yeah, so it's really interesting. There was for a long time, and it's still out there. This whole thing is you should keep all your weight off the handlebars, that you need to like squeeze the tank even under braking, so there's no weight under your handlebars. And I agree to a point, but mostly I don't agree. I think you need to have some level of weight in your hands. And you touched on it earlier without even really knowing that this was where I was going to go is, yeah, if I death grip, I have no feel, right? Like think about typing on a keyboard, right? If you put all your weight on your hands and try to type, you're not going to be able to type, right? But also think about if you take all the weight off of your hands and you hover your hands above the keyboard and try to type, you're also going to struggle, right? You need a little bit of both. You need a little bit of pressure there. You need to have feel.
If for just some stability.
Just for some stability. And even under braking, how we put weight on our hands under braking changes from how when we're cornering, right? As I'm braking, I try to drive all the pressure through the palm of my hand. I'm not death gripping, and I don't want it coming through my fingers. I want it coming into my palm because then I can use my larger arm muscles. And you're going to feel, you're not locking your elbows. You're going to feel with the front. Surprisingly, you're going to feel so much what's happening from the front. You're going to feel the suspension move up, and you're going to feel that pressure compress and release on your hands as what the front's doing. And you're like, oh, and same thing like with the brake lever, right? Like there's a video I'm planning on this about a little tip that I learned from a very high level racer about how we release the brake lever. And it's basically letting you're not just letting go of the brake lever with your finger, you're basically dragging it or slipping your fingers off the top of it. And it gives you this incredible amount of feel as to what the brake is doing. And it's, thinking about what your hands are doing and putting your posture into a certain position that allows your hands to feel what's going on. And it's surprising how easy it is to kind of start developing feel when you allow yourself to do what for most people is kind of natural. Most of us realize that death gripping isn't natural. We can tell, okay, I'm brand new, I'm nervous and I'm scared, but then you get home and your shoulders hurt because they've been flexed and you're like, right? But then we get this bad advice of you should have no pressure on your hands. You should be really light, like baby bird. And I've used the baby birds thing, right? And I think better than baby birds is Capri Sun. How hard do you hold on to a Capri Sun when you open it? And Capri Suns, like for our international viewers and listeners, Capri Suns are like a little bag. It's a little bag of juice that you have to stab a straw through the top of it.
Just Google it. Nobody wants to hear Dave explain a Capri Sun.
but like if you hold on to it really tight, if you death grip it, when you put the straw in, obviously you're going to get shot in the face with juice.
Capri Sun.
And if you don't hold it tight enough, the bag, you're not going to be able to get the straw through the little thing to drink your sugary drink. So it's the right amount. Yeah. And how do we develop that? Well, you work on it. Experience. I work on it every time I ride. I'm always working on feel. How tight am I holding on with my hands? Yep. And what I do with my legs and feet can affect that and help and whatever. But yeah.
There's two drills that I like for people. The first is if you have a sloped driveway or a slightly sloped hill somewhere that's nearby that's convenient that you can go mess around on. Walk next to your bike, having your hands on the handlebars and your hand on the front brake. Walk next to your bike down the hill and just experience the feeling of when I go to the brakes, you'll hear the brakes because the engine's not running. You'll hear the brakes dragging. You'll feel the weight transfer forward. You'll feel the tire going over dips more clearly than if it is just unweighted and you're just pushing it straight along. Because as you go over it, it's going to go through the dip and bounce back, but you're going to have a lot more control over it because of the force you're putting on the brake lever. I think that's an interesting one, and it just gives you this sort of tangible thing to think about of how much brake force does it actually take to make a difference, and it's surprisingly little.
Well, and ironically, that percentage that you're talking about, we do that drill all the time, and it's how you should push your bike in the drive. You should always do this every time you're moving your motorcycle. But that percentage point that you're talking about, that's 1% brake pressure. That's what 95% of trail braking is that much brake pressure.
That's a tiny amount.
So the or not the people who are opposed to the idea of trail braking, they're like, oh, if you go to the front brake, it's going to make the motorcycle stand up. 1% brake pressure is very unlikely to make the motorcycle want to stand up, right?
Yeah.
So
yeah, I think that's a great drill to do. Anybody can go do it. You can do it in the fall. You can do it whenever you want, but just go push your bike around and just feel that brake, feel the front end loading. It sounds silly, but you're going to develop a little bit of feel for that front end.
And you're developing muscle memory, which can't be understated, the value of that.
The other one I like, which is don't do this all the time, but in the right environment, this is a fun drill to do, is I've done this before on a bike where they basically put us on the bike. We went and did some laps, and then they took all of the rebound damping out of the bike, front and rear. They just dialed all the rebound out. They left the compression, but they dialed all the rebound out. Actually, no, I think they dialed it all out.
I thought they did. Yeah, this is an old champ school. I don't think they do this anymore. But Yamaha champ
it's a great drill.
Oh, I think because of the time it took.
Yeah.
But,
so basically, you leave the preload alone, so the spring is still there. You're still supported, but you take all the damping out. And what this does is now every input that the bike has is dramatic. If you go to the brakes abruptly, it pitches onto the nose. If you go to the gas abruptly, it pitches back. If you drop the brakes abruptly, it pitches up. You get this very significant feedback as to what you're doing on the bike and how your inputs are making this difference. Whereas really good damping, which most modern bikes have pretty darn good damping actually, you can mask a lot of bad habits with rebound and compression damping. Where this drill, you're naked, it's exposed. Every little input you do, the bike is telling you about it. I loved that drill.
Well, before we continue, because there's another part of this drill, right? Yeah. And I'll ask you the question at the end of it. So the first part of the drill is they go in and they, because everyone's heard, race bike, you need to stiffen up the suspension, right? Yeah. So they go through and they take all the damping out. So there's no compression, no rebound. You're only operating on the spring. And then you went and did a bunch of laps. And then they came back, or maybe it was vice versa, and they cranked everything to the max rebound, max compression. They stiffened it up for you, right? And then they sent you out. Do you remember which bike was easier to ride? Which version?
So yeah, you kind of set sort of a rough idea of what it feels like with correct damping, and then they go the two directions. You're trying to get back to your correct damping lap time, or as close as you can to it. When it's the loose, open-ended one, you can actually get pretty darn close. You've got to be perfect. You've got to be super smooth everywhere. You cannot make mistakes. But when they do the one where it's all the way cranked down, it is nearly impossible to ride. The bike does not want to turn. It doesn't want to brake. When you go to the gas, the rear spins. Like when you really crank down the damping and effectively lock out the suspension, it is miserable to ride and it's very sketchy. When you go to the brakes, the bike doesn't load the front at all. It just kind of skims across the top. It is not a fun feeling. So
yeah, there's such a lesson in that whole thing, in how much control we have over the motorcycle. And there's a famous story, and I think it was about Ben Spies, or he told the story about how he was struggling with this or that or whatever, and his crew chief was, it's easier to fix Ben than it is to fix the fork. And I think that's kind of what we're talking about with a lack of damping. You get so much feel when you have no damping and you squeeze that front brake. You can feel if you overdid it because you're going to bottom it out right off the bat. Whereas when it's locked out, you can't tell what you gave it. And so there's like so much to be learned from how we interact with the motorcycle when we can feel everything that's going on. And, we see so many riders at the track. How many riders have we seen at the track over the years that are sitting there taking notes and they're adjusting their damping rates constantly between every session? They're looking at their tire and they're like, oh, there's little comet shapes now. And now there's a little circle shape from the wear pattern. And you're like, this is nonsense. Like maybe back in the era of bias ply tires, there was something to be said about reading the tea leaves of the tire. But anymore with modern tires, it's almost meaningless. There's almost no science.
You don't ascribe to the race tire tarot cards?
Yeah, the race tire tarot cards. Because I've looked at the tires of some of the best riders in the world, and there's little comet shapes that some people will tell you is like, oh, you should never have little comet shapes. And you're like, oh, like you know, like
So but I think the main point of the damping idea, that exercise really is, it is a way to let yourself develop some feel for the front end and for loading the front end when the speeds are lower, when the risk is lower. Because I promise, if you go out to a big parking lot, take all the damping out of your bike and just do some basic little figure eights and some braking drills and stuff, I promise you'll be able to tell the difference and start to kind of develop this. So,
and we do it all the time too when we're trying to set something up. Usually we're like, turn it all the way to one max or the other, and then go back from there.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Because that's where you'll tell where the
Whenever you are trying to, and maybe we have a whole other podcast we talk about how to think about tuning a bike, but you never make one click changes typically, right? You've got to make a big enough adjustment that you're actually gonna be able to notice it. Otherwise, is it better? I don't know. About the same. Yeah.
And then typically you only change one thing at a time. But
Definitely,
because you're not going to be able to feel. If you change 3 things or you're changing something every session, you're not going to be able to figure out
You don't know which is which.
What's what.
Yeah.
And that's a big part of where feel comes from. Yeah. Yeah. It's a rabbit hole. Everything's a rabbit hole. These complicated little machines, this like little 2-wheeled flying machine with a hinge in the middle of it. There's so much to it. And you know, if you think even the MotoGP guys are still struggling to figure it all out, right? Like it's not a set science, you know, and that's part of what's so exciting about MotoGP is these guys are still trying to figure it out. Mm-hmm. And that's fascinating.
Anything else today?
No, I think we covered a lot there.
Yeah. Totally went on all kinds of tangents. I enjoyed it.
Right. We never said we're wrapping up and then went on another tangent. So we just like leaned into the tangent.
Yeah. Awesome. All right. Thanks, guys. Have a good week.
We'll see you next week.